The late afternoon sun spilled across the wooden planks of the Santa Monica Pier, warming the air with that familiar mix of salt, seaweed, and fried food from the stalls. The waves crashed softly against the beams below, blending into the hum of conversation, music, and laughter. It was the kind of place where everyone looked happy, tourists snapping photos, couples holding hands, kids chasing seagulls. Yet, for Lena, 17 years old and quiet as the tide itself, it was also the one place she could pretend everything was normal again. She sat near the edge of the pier, sketchbook balanced carefully on her lap. Her wheelchair was locked in place, her backpack slung behind her seat. A pencil moved gently in her right hand, tracing the outline of the horizon where the sun met the sea. She loved the light here, how it turned the water into gold and made every stranger's face glow with something soft. The ocean, unlike people, never looked at her differently. It didn't see the chair, the braces, or the scars that snaked faintly down her calves. The only sound she heard was the slow rhythm of the waves and the occasional creak of the wood beneath her wheels. Then came laughter, sharp, loud, the kind that sliced through peace like a broken bottle. Lena glanced up. A group of 4 boys was heading her way, weaving through the crowd with that careless swagger that only comes from being certain no one will stop you. She recognized them instantly, seniors from her high school. Trent, the tall one with the slick hair and brand-name sneakers, walked in front, a half-empty soda in one hand. Behind him came Caleb, Josh, and Mason, all faces she knew too well from the hallways where whispers followed her like shadows. They had never spoken to her kindly. Sometimes they'd just laugh when she rolled past. Other times, Trent would call out something like, "Hey Wheels, wanna race?" And his friends would snicker until a teacher appeared. She thought she'd escaped that today. The pier was her escape, the one place she thought she could be invisible. But now, their eyes were on her. "Hey, look who it is," Trent said, stopping just a few feet away. His tone was light, but the smirk that followed made her heart sink. "Didn't think they allowed vehicles up here." His friends laughed. The sound made a few heads turn, but nobody said anything. People just walked by, pretending not to notice, like always. Lena gripped her pencil tighter. She wanted to ignore them, to stay quiet, but her throat burned. "Could you just go away?" she said softly. Trent took a step closer, tilting his head like he couldn't quite hear her. "What was that? I couldn't catch it." "You gotta speak up, sweetheart." Caleb chuckled, kicking lightly at the back of her wheelchair. "Yeah, use that big voice of yours." Lena tried to roll back, but her brakes were still locked. She reached for them, but her trembling fingers fumbled. The sketchbook on her lap slipped and fell to the boards, pages fluttering open to reveal her drawings, the sea, the pier, the people around her. They were good drawings, delicate and detailed, every line filled with care. Josh bent down and picked it up. "Hey, check this out," he said, flipping through the pages. "She's like a little artist or something. Give that back." Lena's voice cracked. Trent raised an eyebrow. "Or what?" He stepped closer and took the book from Josh, holding it out of reach like a trophy. "You gonna roll over my foot?" A couple of nearby tourists had stopped to watch, uneasy but not intervening. The air seemed to thicken, like the whole pier was holding its breath. Trent looked down at one of the sketches, a drawing of the sunset over the water. His grin faltered for a second. "You drew this?" Lena nodded, silently. He looked back at her, then smirked. "Not bad, but you know, art's all about passion, right? Gotta put your whole self into it." And before she could react, he tossed the sketchbook toward the edge of the pier. It skidded across the planks and stopped just short of slipping into the ocean. "No," Lena's voice rang out. She unlocked her brakes and rolled forward quickly, grabbing the book before the wind could take it. When she turned back, her chest was tight, her hands shaking. "Why would you do that?" Trent shrugged. "Relax." It didn't fall. Something broke inside her then, the quiet patience she'd built up over months of pretending not to hear the jokes, not to feel the pitying stares. "You think this is funny?" she said, her voice louder now, eyes glassy with tears. Trent's smirk widened. "Kinda, yeah." He took a step closer and kicked the side of her wheelchair, just a little tap, but enough to make it jerk sideways. "Stop it, come on," he said, pretending to frown. "Don't be so uptight, we're just having fun." He kicked it again, harder this time. The front wheel lifted slightly off the ground before slamming back down. Lena gasped, clutching her armrest to keep balance. "Move, Cripple," he shouted suddenly, and the words hit her like a slap. The laughter that followed felt louder than the waves, louder than the music, louder than anything else in the world. She couldn't breathe. People nearby were staring now, couples, kids, families, some with disgust, others with discomfort. But no one moved to help. A woman pulled her child closer, whispering something and walking away. A man shook his head but didn't step forward. Lena's eyes burned as she blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. Her voice trembled when she spoke, barely audible. "Please, just stop." Caleb snorted. "You gonna cry?" Trent leaned down, his face inches from hers. "You know, if you didn't want attention, maybe you shouldn't roll yourself right into the middle of the pier. You kinda stand out, don't you?" Then, from behind them, came a sound, faint at first, but unmistakable. A deep, low growl that didn't belong to the ocean or the crowd. It grew louder, steadier, vibrating through the planks beneath their feet. Engines. Dozens of them. Trent's smirk faltered. He straightened up, glancing over his shoulder. The sound grew heavier, a chorus of motorcycles approaching from the parking lot, engines revving in unison. People turned to look, shading their eyes against the sun. And then they appeared. A line of black and chrome machines rolled down the pier entrance, thick tires glinting, exhausts rumbling, leather jackets catching the dying sunlight. Each one bore the same insignia, a coiled serpent wrapped around a steel gear. Across the top, in bold letters, Iron Serpents MC, Los Angeles. They rode in slow, steady formation, the boards rattling beneath them. The crowd parted instinctively, murmuring as the sound filled every corner of the pier. Lena stared, wide-eyed. She'd never seen anything like it, the sheer power, the unity of it. The riders weren't young, not like Trent and his friends. Most were in their 30s, 40s, some even older, men and women alike, faces half hidden behind dark glasses and helmets. As they rolled closer, the leader, a tall man with a gray beard and arms thick with tattoos, caught sight of what was happening. His gaze moved from Lena's trembling hands to Trent's sneering face, and something cold and sharp passed through his eyes. He raised one hand. The entire line of bikes slowed, then stopped. Engines idled, growling like beasts waiting for a signal. The man dismounted, boots thudding against the wooden planks. He walked with the slow, deliberate confidence of someone who had seen far worse than teenage cruelty. His leather vest bore the patch, Reaper, President. He stopped a few feet from Trent. For a moment, he didn't speak. The only sound was the quiet ticking of hot engines cooling in the sea breeze. "Son," he said finally, his voice deep and even, "you got 3 seconds to back away from her chair." The words weren't loud, but they cut through the noise like a blade. Trent blinked. "What?" Reaper took another step forward, and behind him, 20 bikers killed their engines in unison. The silence that followed was deafening. "I said," the man repeated, slower this time, "back away from her chair." Lena's heart pounded. She didn't understand what was happening, who these people were, but she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. Trent swallowed, glancing at his friends. They looked nervous now, shifting on their feet. The crowd was watching, phones up, whispers spreading like wildfire. The biker's eyes never left the boys. "You like picking on people who can't fight back, huh?" he said quietly. "Let's see how brave you are when someone stands up." The boys didn't move. Trent opened his mouth to say something, but no sound came out. Behind Reaper, the other bikers began to fan out, forming a half-circle that boxed the boys in. The air thrummed with power, not violence yet, but the promise of it. Lena's hands trembled on her wheels. She could feel the heat from the engines, the vibration in the wood, the shift in the crowd's energy. For the first time since the accident, since losing so much of herself to pain and pity, she felt the world move for her instead of against her. Reaper looked over his shoulder at her, his expression softening. "You okay, sweetheart?" Lena nodded slowly, her voice a whisper. I think so." He turned back to the boys. "You heard her," he said, his tone hardening again. "Now move." And this time, Trent stepped back.